Welcome back, one and all, and it's time yet again for more Kamen Rider Saber with this week's episode, episode 22. Nonetheless, I want to save people. Anyway, this is, as promised last week, this is Buster's focus episode in a way. We're dealing with the whole Toma Sword of Logos Fallout thing. And it kind of plays like a very much shorter version of what we got with Tetsuo and his arc, the 2 episodes. Anyway, the episode starts off basically recapping, or at least following up with what happened last week. Tetsuo is fully on Toma's side, and he basically really wants to examine the Sword of Light. He really wants to examine Yuri. At least a kind of Lupin the Third-esque bit where he just leaps him through the air, and I just find that kind of funny. It's like, I saw that in the trailer from last week, and I was like, why is he acting like that? I was like, oh wait, it's his sword thing again. He's doing it because Swordsmith. Anyway, Toma and May get a call from the victim of last week, from the Charybdis Megado, and her sister is missing, and Yuri forgot to take her memories after he beat them last week, and the Charybdis Megado obviously can come back and is possessing the other twin. As we learn later, this is actually part of Storios' plan to find 2 people who are so similar, basically on a genetic, personality, and everything else level, that they can basically merge into one being inside of the Megado. So it can be a Megado with 2 hosts that are technically 1 person. And so the merging will be so complete that even the Sword of Light wouldn't be able to save them. Which is honestly a pretty clever plan. It is a pretty clever plan, which honestly Storios is the one that comes up with the best plans. But anyway, I kind of spoiled that. It's kind of revealed much later in the episode. But we cut back to the Swords of Logos because, Ogami's telling everybody that Daisenji or Tetsuo is on Toma's side now. And he's like, look, he's not a traitor. Him and Toma really aren't bad. They're just doing things their own way, and we do things our way. And basically he's told that, go get Toma's sword and book. And he's like, okay, fine, I'll do it. They'll be a really cute moment with Buster and his kid. And honestly, the best moments with Ogami are when he's being a dad, and I fucking love it because it's always adorable. It's like a really fun moment where he's like, his kid was obviously asking questions because, he was pretty close to Toma, or at least he liked Toma, and so he's like, hey dad, why don't you work with Toma? And he's like, well, I have an important role as Swords of Logos. I have to protect the future for you and, kids like you. And it's a really sweet moment, and I really like it. But anyway, we then cut to his fight with Toma, which is a quick fight, but we do get a Toma kind of, basically, it's one of those weird bits in Rider where we know the power levels exist, but we also have to take into account other factors, because Toma's like, oh, his armor's so strong that I can't get into it with half-hearted attacks. And it's like a pretty cool moment where Toma has to think of strategy, but the strategy is just use the sword better. But, it's also a cool moment because Buster's like, oh, you've grown since last time. But he's still back to calling Toma a novelist, and it's like, okay, someone defines sword. They don't use the term swordsman in this episode, and I'm happy about that. But I'm like, someone please define terms. Yet again, still, I'm going to be like this if someone actually defines what separates Toma from the rest of them at this point. This would make sense if this was earlier on in the series, but after the whole stuff with Caliber, it just doesn't make much sense to me on a personal level why they're acting like this now of all times. Is it because Sophia's missing, which we don't have much follow-up on in this episode? Well, we don't have any follow-up on that at all in this episode. But anyway, Toma's looking for the other sister, then the other sister comes back to the one that got rescued from last week, and then they merge into the Megado together, and at least I thought we were going to get body horror, but it's just mental horror. Because it's this really kind of creepy moment where she's just wandering by herself in the city trying to find her sister because she can hear her voice, but then she reaches down towards her stomach because she hears the voice coming from her stomach. I'm like, oh, are we gonna get body horror? Are we gonna get the mind fuck? But no, it's just, and then she turns to the Megado, And May's book finally comes into play yet again, despite the fact that it really dropped the ball last week. Also another note, the fight between Saber and Buster was really good. It was short, which is kind of sad. It was a really cool fight, and Buster, he used his big attack, and Toma took it and did that anime thing where you take a heavy attack and you get buried into the ground. And in the aftermath of that, Buster took the King of Arthur Wonder Ride book, because it fell out of Toma's pocket, or wherever he keeps the books on him and when he's out and about. I'm getting O's flashbacks now. The whole count the medals, but now it's like, who has what book? Thankfully, there are not as many things in play as it was in O's at times, because they don't use the whole episode callback thing like they did in O's. Which, if this was like O's and it was more getting the books, this would be kind of annoying at this point, but it's not, because they're not doing that. Anyway, so the Megiddo fight goes on, and basically Toma is heavily injured, and I'm like, okay, Yuri, why don't you use your healing powers that we've established that you have? Because it kind of, basically every time Toma's injured, it gets diminished, because I remember in the back of my head, Yuri has healing powers. Like, Toma could be in a full body cast and just have a pinky, and I'm like, hey, Yuri, just lay on hands. You can do that. Like, by the end of the episode, I think he remembers he can do that, because he's not as debilitated as he was. Debilitated as he was at the end of the episode, but he doesn't really get another fight in this episode, because we still have to show off the new Psycho form, the X-Swordsman, and this X-Swordsman is a cool fight this week as well, and it also has a cool moment where Tetsuo is fighting the Megiddo, because I don't know why, because him and Yuri... Okay, so basically it's like, I have to stall for Yuri to get here, because I can't take it out by myself, because then I hurt the person inside the Megiddo. But you and Yuri came from the same place. You were both in Toma's house, and as we see later, Yuri wasn't doing his lay on hands to Toma, so why did it take Yuri and May longer to get there than it did you? Do you just run faster or something? I mean, it would make sense considering the fact that Yuri can't, or probably shouldn't, run to the scene to transform. I mean, transform and then run to the scene, considering the whole sword thing. But that sword can fly by itself, so again, at least a question of why did it take him much longer than you did. Anyway, we also continue Ren's mental character arc, because he is slowly, like, he feels a bit sad that Tetsuo left, and then, he also doesn't want to hurt the people inside the Megiddo. They know that that's a thing, and he doesn't want to hurt them, and it's a really, really kind of climactic moment when, basically, so obviously, Storio's plan works, and Yuri can't get the people out of the Megiddo like you normally can, and so he's like, is there no choice but to cut them down? And so, he's hesitating to transform and all that. Thankfully, Toma comes in and gives them an inspiring speech to get them to see their differences, unmerge, and let Yuri save them. It does continue Ren's angsting, which is nice to see that he's still going through his little character arc. But speaking of character arcs or more character assassinations, Ren, I'm calling Rentaro Ren for some reason in this, maybe because it's shorter, but Ren, as in the ninja, he is the most unlikable little shit in this episode, and I feel like this is on purpose for a bigger plot point later on, or he's the designated one that's going to die, so they want to make him, more unlikable. But he's basically a little shit in this episode. It's like, he's like, oh, that old fart Ogami's not coming back, or him not caring about the people inside of the Megiddo. Like, he's like, I don't care if there are people in there, I'm gonna cut that bitch down. And I was like, bruh, why are you this unlikable right now? You were so much, like, yeah, you were like, I want to fight, but you weren't this earlier. I mean, you really weren't developed that much, but this seems to be character assassination at this point. Dear God. It's like they want him to be the one to die, or at least, fall into the traitor trap, and I honestly feel like that's what's going to happen to him, and it feels way too easy. Also, I want to make a quick mention of something. I had a very strong Wizard vibe watching this episode, and don't get me wrong, I honestly do like Wizard. I'll talk more about that when we get to Wizard in like 10 years. we can talk about Wizard in like, I don't know how long. But yeah, but I got a very strong Wizard vibe from this episode, mainly because, Toma's giving the whole inspiring speech to the victim of the week, or in this case, the victim of this weekend and last week. But it doesn't feel as earned because, again, we haven't really explored this character, this victim of the week, as much, or basically at all. We only know like that they have some issues, or at least the one sister has issues seeing herself as an individual because she's always heard that her and her sister come as a pair. The classic, I don't know who or what I am without my other half when it comes to twins thing. But in this case, again, it's only a bit of a moment, but outside of that, there's not really, again, we don't really explore her because there's so much going on in this episode because we have Ogami stuff, we have, Toma stuff with Ogami, and honestly, I do feel the focus of the episode was best served on Ogami, but it still feels weird that we're supposed to have this big emotional moment with a character that we barely know. Again, going back to Wizard. And again, I like Wizard. I'll talk about that later. But yeah, this felt like one of the weaker Wizard episodes, in a sense. But, it still did have its good moments. Again, everything about Buster was pretty cool. And, so his logos continues to be kind of sketchy. And, yeah, this episode, also the stuff with Buster, was pretty simple. Again, fucking Kienzan continues his character assassination track. And yeah, that's basically the episode, in all honesty. This isn't a very meaty one. I feel last week's episode was meatier. That wasn't an intentional pun at all. But yeah, not a lot to go with on this one. Again, outside of Ogami stuff, it was pretty simple. Again, I liked Ogami stuff. Kenzan continues to be the worst character, and I feel that's on purpose because they're trying to character assassinate him right now. I don't know why. Again, he's raising death flags, and I kind of want him to die by this point. So, yeah. This episode was fine, but it could have been better. Again, I feel that the victim of the week was weak as all hell. Not to say that their plight was understandable. It was super understandable. And they did have that really cool moment with the whole voice coming from the stomach thing earlier. But, again, it's really hard because we don't even explore the other twin at all. We just explore the one twin. Like, that's the thing. If for stuff like this, you kind of have to go over both twins and how they feel. Like, maybe if we had the other twin around and had her explain her psychosis about the whole thing, then maybe this would have hit a bit better. But as far as we can attest, the other twin was like, oh, hey, yeah, everything's perfectly fine. I'm perfectly happy the way things are. I like being so similar to my twin. It makes me feel comfortable. There's some people are like that. But we don't really do that at all. We don't know the other twin at all. We just know the one twin who was the main victim. Oh, also, while the Cryptus Megado was destroyed, they did make an altar book out of it, a complete altar book, so Storios' plan kind of worked in a way, 100%, like 90% of it. So yeah, they can bring the Cryptus Megado back whenever they want to, which is really cool. I did like the Cryptus Megado. It was a kind of cool thing, and it had a cooler fight this week because it did this whole eating the air to draw the opponent in. It reminded me of the hand from Diamond is Unbreakable, for those of you who don't know JoJo's. It reminded me of the thing that the hand can do, but just erasing the air and just, the vacuum that results, happens as a result. It's a pretty cool thing, although in this case it's eating the air. He had a pretty cool quick fight with Slash and a pretty cool fight with Psycho. I'm blanking on rider names. I keep referring to them as character names, not rider names. It's kind of confusing to keep going back and forth. But yeah, that's it for this episode. I'm honestly looking a bit more forward to next week's episode, considering the fact that we're gonna get the Berserker form for this season, and I like me some writer Berserker forms, even though someone points something out in the next episode and that looks ridiculous, and I'll talk about that next time. But if you're not tired of hearing my voice already, and I'm going to do some minor advertising because I don't do those at all. If you're not tired of hearing my voice already, if you want to hear more about Kamen Rider, I have done a nearly hour-long video on Kamen Rider 5. It's one of my favorite seasons of Rider. It will be in the, the end card, like for the last 20 seconds of this video. And yeah, if you're not tired of hearing my voice already, take a look at that end card. And I'll see you all next week. Unless you decide to look at the Fives video, so I'll see you there if you decide to look at that one, although that video came out before this one, but semantics. Anyway, till next time, everybody.